his autobiography, is that different from?
Yes.
Oh.
Right. So at least to start with, all of them are going to be from this series. But so you've got probably actually more knowledge of his biography. So these books, the series refers to itself as interpretive biography. So what they really are is they're less about sort of like when did he marry who and that kind of stuff, and more about what do we think his um, meaning to the Jewish community, to the larger community, to America, to the world, whatever. Um, some of the folks are alive, like Mel Brooks and Barbara Streisand and a few others like that. Carole King. We actually had the author of the Carole King book in this series spoke just a few weeks ago, right, Vanessa? So and some of these other authors, as we run across them, maybe we'll get them involved in the conversation a little bit too and see what they have to say about it. Um, so this book is called Mel Brooks' Disobedient Jew. And that comes from really a comment that, occasionally Mel Brooks would refer to himself in conversation with somebody. He would say, "You're obedient Jew, Mel Brooks." Right. And our author argues that when he said that, it's a joke because Mel Brooks is almost always joking. Apparently, that's what his friends and family say, that he is the funniest human being they've ever met. And, I mean, some comedians are not like that, right? When they're off stage, they may be shy and taciturn, and quiet. But Mel Brooks apparently is not one of those people. And so he's funny all the time, at home and, wherever, but rarely obedient is basically the point that our author is making, and that there's a certain kind of Jewish assertiveness in that disobedience that's really important in terms of um, Jewish Americans, and who we are and what and where we are in this time in the world. Um, that in some very real ways, Mel Brooks made it kind of safe, if not cool, to be Jewish in public in America, right? And coming from a time in the 1950s when I think it was much more about let's see if we can't be like everybody else, right? Let's blend in. I always think about the ad campaign, which was co-sponsored by Jewish organizations back in the 50s and 60s, which was "Go to the church of your choice," right? Was the campaign. And one of those churches was a synagogue. That's kind of how we looked at Jewish life in that time. Is better to not be noticed. Now that didn't mean that people weren't achieving great things, making great strides in the medical professions and in the law and wherever, and rising in government and all sorts of things. But it was sort of a theory that maybe I lived in Wisconsin for a while as a rabbi, 30 years ago. We had a joke within the Jewish community because Wisconsin at that time had two Jewish senators. Don't tell them, right? That and that's that was Ross Feingold and Herb Kohl, if you're thinking about who were two Jewish senators from Wisconsin, right? But and I think in a very real way, Herb Kohl was more like the older style. People didn't really know Herb Kohl was Jewish, Russ Feingold, partly because of the name, partly because his sister was a rabbi in Wisconsin, the first woman rabbi in Wisconsin, partly because of just his family upbringing. I think it was more clear to more people early on that he was a Jewish senator, right, from Wisconsin. But so Mel Brooks comes along, and so we may listen to him doing something like the 2,000-year-old man now, and we say, "Oh, look at Mel Brooks doing that Jewish accent," right? And think that it's sort of like maybe even old-fashioned now. Think about it. But at the time, it was actually, remember that there were a lot of Jewish comedians. They were not doing Jewish dialect jokes, right? They were doing very, very polished sounding, very American sort of things, you know. Yeah. Well, so with us, you know, for us, by us, right? A little bit different. Okay. So, and that's the world that Mel Brooks does come out of. I mean, he starts out, you know, his comedy career starts in the Borscht Belt as a teenager, right? He's what they call a tumbler in those resorts, you know, largely in the Catskills, you know, and a little bit in the Poconos too, but mostly the Catskills. But these kind of Jewish resorts, and remember they exist because Jews weren't welcome at other resorts, right? So they're created specifically because we're not welcome somewhere else. I mean, the same as Jewish country clubs around here that get started at a time when Jews aren't welcome in other country clubs, and so we create our own, right? So it is a place that from the start is virtually all Jewish, with the exception of some you know, African American help, frankly. But otherwise, you know, the from the waiters in the dining room who were college kids often to you know, to the entertainment and everything else, you had a lot of Jews. Tumblr wasn't really like you know, we think about comedy clubs now and a comedian standing up and doing his 5 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever it is. Tumblr wandered around with the people, right? And just created humor wherever they went, just keeping people engaged. Something like a cruise director a little bit, but much wackier and wilder. So I think one of Mel Brooks's things, you know, is he would be fully clothed, get up onto the diving board at the pool with a suitcase full of rocks and say, I can't take it anymore, and jump in, right? Which was a particularly daring act for him because he didn't know how to swim. So he had to be rescued by the lifeguard every time he did it, which was, you know, part of the joke, right? And so it may not seem that funny to us, you know, but you know, he put a big shtick on it and made it into something that made people laugh, right? And so those were the kinds of things that a Tumblr does. And to some extent, you can see it in some of the comedians who come out of that world. You know, Don Rickles is probably a good example, right? The well known for picking on the crowd, right? Well, you know, he got his start doing that in the Borscht Belt, you know, and stuff. So those guys were out there, but to do it in public, right? And in fact, even when Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner, both Jews, right, started doing the 2,000-year-old man, they did it at parties for their friends. That's where it comes from, right? It was, and they both resisted for a considerable amount of time, actually putting it out on a record. And it wasn't until some non-Jewish friends, I think Steve Allen was one in particular, if I remember correctly, suggested, you've got to put that out. This is so funny, people have to hear it. And so it wasn't until then that they actually, years after they started doing the 2,000-year-old man just for fun, that they actually put it out on a record. To some extent, it was also an act of desperation on Mel Brooks's part to actually put out the 2,000-year-old man on a record, because you know, he got his big break, I guess you'd say, working for Sid Caesar, and your show of shows and whatever the successor to that was, the Sid Caesar Hour or something, I think like that. But so he got his start on the writing staff for that and wrote along with, I mean, it was an incredible room of writers. I think you probably know about this stuff, that Neil Simon was in that writing room. I mean, you know, really an incredible group of people who were writing there. Carl Reiner as well. Woody Allen started out as the coffee boy, right? I mean, he was younger than the rest of them. But yeah, ended up getting some gags in there too, right? So, but so Mel Brooks does that for a while, and there some of those. If you've seen some of those clips, unfortunately, a lot of this stuff doesn't exist actually from that time period. They weren't all these shows were not really recorded for posterity and kept. For instance, the Johnny Carson show, I think we don't have the first 15 years of Johnny Carson. They didn't bother. They taped over it every night. So some of these things that were done on live television in those days, we don't have.
Johnny Carson, they had that clip.
They had Mel Brooks's first appearance on Johnny Carson.
Johnny Carson bought him for his first show.
Really?
Yeah, and it's in the 99-year-old man.
Okay. So maybe they found some stuff that didn't exist the last time I looked. I have not watched that show yet. This is a new documentary that just been released on HBO and HBO Max just in the last week. I think it's been obviously been in production for a while. And in fact, I have something, maybe I'll show a clip here in a minute of it's produced and directed by Judd Apatow, who is also Jewish and has made movies in recent years. I'm sorry?
What's the name of the show?
The 99-year-old man, because Mel Brooks is indeed still alive and 99 years old. So, so Judd Apatow has been making, he's made a series of documentaries now about comedians. Are they all Jews? Not sure. Gary Shandling. I'm just trying to remember who else he's done, but a handful.
Rabbi, who was the one that used to? Who was the one that used to sing "Hello, Mother, Hello, Father"?
Alan Sherman.
Oh yeah.
Alan Sherman. Yes, a great satirist or parodist, I guess would be the right word for Alan Sherman. And occasionally sang in Yiddish. So he's in a direct line out of somebody like Mickey Katz. Remember that name from before that? That's Joel Gray's father, actually, was a Yiddish American singer, parodist. So someone should write a biography of him if they haven't yet. That'd be a good one. So let me see if I can show another clip for you guys. This is actually, I think this appeared on CBS this morning, just a few weeks ago, to promote this documentary that Judd Apatow did. So let's see if I can get there. A couple of things I have to do to get there. Okay.
If you're blue and you don't know where to go to, why don't you go where fashion sits?
Young Frankenstein is just one of the films that made Mel Brooks a comedy legend. Now at age 99, Brooks is the subject of a new documentary directed by one of his biggest fans, Judd Apatow, who's talking with Tracy Smith.
I'm very honored to be asked to present the award for Best Director, because I'm pretty sure that means the Globes people think I'm also one of the best directors.
At the Golden Globes last week, Judd Apatow cracked up the room, but he's more at home behind the camera.
You're gonna look good after this, man.
Thanks, man.
Apatow has helped create some of the more memorable moments on film.
None of these journals are the same.
He's also made documentaries about some of his idols, like Gary Shandling and George Carlin.
This is your home. You have a giant Buddha.
But his latest subject hardly needs an introduction.
A house needs a Buddha. That's
Every house needs a Buddha. How'd this get decorated? Who picked this?
My late great wife, Anne Bancroft. She had good taste in everything except husbands.
Why'd you decide to do one on Mel?
Well, Mel is the reason why most of us went into comedy. You know, when I was a kid, I was born in 1967, and all these Mel Brooks movies came out while I was a little kid and trying to figure out what the world meant and who I was. And here was this hilarious, tiny Jewish man who was really loud and brash and confident and seemed like the coolest guy in the world. And I think me and a lot of people thought, oh, that's the job you would want. You would want to be Mel Brooks.
Now, why did you become a comedian?
Sex.
I see.
Mel Brooks, the 99-year-old man, streams this week on HBO Max. Co-directed by Michael Bonfiglio, it's the surprisingly personal origin story of a comedy legend. A Brooklyn kid raised by a single mom whose 4 sons went off to war.
I was sent from a provincial tenement in Brooklyn to France, 1104th Engineer Combat Battalion.
And the Germans had just left France?
Yeah.
And so your job was to make sure they didn't leave behind booby traps?
Right. 45-degree angle with your bayonet, go through the soil, find, dink, dink, uh-oh.
And I said to him, you know, did you ever think that you were gonna die? And he goes, only every second of every day.
Oh my goodness.
Mel Brooks came home from the war, but he never really stopped fighting the Nazis.
Springtime for Hitler and Germany.
Why do you think Hitler was a frequent target for him?
The fear that it was gonna happen again. And then if you don't keep pointing out how horrifying this is, then it can, you know, slowly bubble back up, which is something we see right now.
And Mel was the one always pointing the finger, saying,
Yeah.
Hey, boys, look what I got here. Hey, where are the white women at?
And he was equally fearless against racism. His 1974 film, Blazing Saddles, is the story of a black sheriff in a racist town. Critics were divided over the raunchy comedy, but it was a monster hit with moviegoers.
Yes? Pardon me, boy. Is this the Transylvania station?
Yeah, Truck 29.
And just a few months later, he came out with this.
Walk this way. This way.
We all know that there are all these great movies that he's done, but 2 of them came out in the same year.
Yeah.
Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
What did that do for Mel Brooks' status?
He just became Beyonce for a little while. I mean, he was a real sensation, and it was kind of shocking, right? To 2 of the best comedies of all time come out in the same year. And we didn't talk about this in the documentary, but there was some sense that Blazing Saddles was so daring that maybe he made sure to make another movie so that if they really turned on him with Blazing Saddles, they already had another one to show him.
I am not an animal!
It wasn't all just for laughs. Mel Brooks also produced dramas like The Elephant Man, but he did it quietly.
He didn't put his name on it.
He thought it was a distraction, and you would think the movie was silly because his name was on it. But yet it said Brooks Films, so I think people figured it out. I think he should put his name on there.
What has kept you alive for 2,000 years?
An enormous fear of death.
No history of Mel Brooks' life would be complete without a mention of his best friend, the comedy giant, Carl Reiner.
It's one of the great friendships of all time because they were friends for, 70 years, maybe more. And, you know, some people are just magic together. They just fit. And they adored each other more than I've ever seen 2 people adore and respect each other. And I asked him, you know, what is the core of this? And he said, he's my father.
Carl was only 4 years older, but Mel looked up to him. And later in life, as widowers, they leaned on one another. Anne Bancroft died in 2005. Estelle Reiner in 2008.
How do you think he went on after Anne died?
I think it was very, very hard. You know, he famously would go eat dinner and watch a movie with Carl Reiner at Carl Reiner's house, and did that for many, many years. And they supported each other, and that's how both of them got through it. And then after Carl died, Mel would go to Carl's house alone and eat dinner and watch a movie. And I asked him why, and he said, because it feels like he's there in some way.
I want everything I've ever seen in the movies. Leo, say you'll join me. I'll do it. My God, I'll do it.
Mel Brooks, who will turn 100 in June, has 2 Oscars, 4 Emmys, and the Broadway version of his hit movie, The Producers, has 12 Tonys, a record that still stands today. He also won 3 Grammys, so that gives him rare EGOT status as the winner of an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony.
High anxiety.
What's more, he's lived long enough to see how his work endures in his films and in the countless comedians he inspired.
What did he say when you asked him about his legacy?
He said he thought he was put on this earth to make people laugh, and he did that.
What do you think Mel Brooks' legacy is?
The main one is probably the funniest person of all time and creator of some of the best films of all time, one of the great Broadway musicals of all time, who had the courage to make comedy both about unimportant things and the most important things, and he did it longer than anybody.
So it's a pretty good 8 minutes there without, you know, but I'm can't wait to watch the documentary, frankly. I may watch it later tonight, you know. So, so it's really, but that gives you a sense of the importance and the stature, right? But, you know, Mel Brooks, talking about his career once, it's the only good thing Hitler ever did for a Jew was his career, right? You know, and so the first movie he actually directs is The Producers. So after this sort of difficult period, actually, after the time of Sid Caesar and Your Show of Shows, he kind of flounders along for a little while. He actually won his first Oscar, I think it was 1963, for a 3-minute cartoon called The Critic, which I think he actually produced as well as writing. But it's an abstract little cartoon with him just doing a voiceover commenting on the things that he saw there. So he actually won an Oscar for it, but he couldn't really get another job. And you know, occasionally he was writing, you know, writing jokes for somebody's TV special or something like that. But he was associated with a few different Broadway shows that were going to happen and they never happened and things like that. So, but he started working on, he was working on this Broadway show, and I guess for an article in the newspaper, you know, so what are you going to work on next after you finish this show? And he said, well, Springtime for Hitler, right? So he came up with that title before he had anything that he was planning to do. Although the character that Zero Mostel plays in this movie, of the producer who finances his plays by essentially being a gigolo for little old ladies, is apparently based on a real character. This is guy who Mel Brooks has said in some interviews had one suit and a bathrobe and lived in his office. And when the suit was being cleaned, he was wearing the bathrobe, right? And but going out and doing this, and then has this sort of moment of clarity where this idea of bringing this together, this story about this producer and producing the worst play in the history of the world, comes into focus. And so he wrote the screenplay for The Producers. around the same time, he worked with Buck Henry, and they created a TV series called Get Smart. And so if you think about this, this 10-year period, really, from 67 to 77, where it's Get Smart, it's the producers, the 12 chairs, and Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles, right? There was a time period in there where Mel Brooks was in a list of the most popular movie stars in America. He was number 4. Burt Reynolds was number 5, which apparently Mel Brooks took some delight in that and called Burt Reynolds to tell him. That level of stardom didn't last forever, but he did make these remarkable film parodies, which, as our author talks about, those kind of parodies come from love, right? You have to watch a lot of Westerns to get all the things about a Western right? To find all of the scenes that are worth making fun of and that are so much a part of Westerns, right? So the one that I think certainly most, I don't know if women remember it as much as men remember it, is the campfire scene. Yeah. I'm sorry?
If you have children, you remember.
Yeah, right. If you saw the movie with your children, I guess. I'm not sure my children have ever seen that movie. And I think my children would be scandalized by it, actually. Yeah. Right. But it is true, and I've heard Mel Brooks in interviews say this, that he was lucky to make these movies when he made them, because the screenplay for Blazing Saddles would not pass muster today. Right? Its use of the N-word, which is very pointed in this movie. It's making an anti-racist point, but you're still not allowed to use the word, right? It's one of his co-writers in the writing room for Blazing Saddles was a young Richard Pryor, actually. And so a lot of those things, like the joke we saw there where he pulls Cleavon Little out from behind the rock, that's I think there's some Richard Pryor influence, right, in this movie. And I'd say, if Richard Pryor, who famously brought the N-word into comedy, is probably responsible for a lot of that stuff in the movie Blazing Saddles. But that's why I say my kids would be scandalized to watch it today, actually. I think they're much more prudish about language. So Mel Brooks, it is interesting that he's rising up around the same time as Lenny Bruce, who, and it's not that there weren't other comedians who were using language like that, but using it in the places that they used it is the change, right? There was always kind of let's call it an underground scene, and in the Black community it was people like Red Fox, later on Richard Pryor. But so you could go somewhere and hear that language, but bringing it into a mainstream nightclub, right, as Lenny Bruce did, or into a jazz concert, things like that. That was highly unusual. So bringing some of this into a movie like Blazing Saddles was pretty daring. And the springtime for Hitler scene in the producers was extremely daring in its time, right? It was, notwithstanding the fact that around the same time a TV show came on the air called Hogan's Heroes, which also made fun of Nazis. But there was, Hitler doesn't really appear in that show, right? It's always these underlings, so it's definitely steps farther. And so a lot of what our author talks about in Disobedient Jew is the question of bad taste, right? And Mel Brooks was not afraid of bad taste. Right? And his goal was to have as many jokes as possible crammed in to the movie. If you don't like 4 of them, the 5th one you'll like, right? And that was just his style. And it catches on in a way with other comedians and other movies. And there are plenty of filmmakers who really owe their career to having grown up watching Mel Brooks movies. I'd say the Zucker brothers from Milwaukee are a great example, right? If you watch the movie Airplane, or some of their later ones, Top Secret or The Naked Gun, they're also parodies of styles of movies that Mel Brooks didn't get around to parodying himself. And the speed of the jokes, the jokes just keep coming, right, is directly out of watching a Mel Brooks movie, I'd say. So he has a really profound impact on people like Judd Apatow, who just told us that, but on many others as well, right? So had a bit of a called a friendly rivalry with Woody Allen, but there was no question about whose movies were more popular with moviegoers. Unquestionably, Mel Brooks. More people saw Blazing Saddles in the movie theater than ever saw all of Woody Allen movies altogether. So there was some rivalry there, but in a lot of ways, Mel Brooks was the definitive Jewish filmmaker of that generation, and there was always something Jewish in it too, right? So when he made Men in Tights, which is his version of a Robin Hood movie, right? He plays a character. You remember the character he plays? It's you're laughing. You maybe remember. There is no Friar Tuck in his version. There is a Rabbi Tuckman.
Oh, yeah.
And that's Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks shows up in the movie driving a wagon of sacramental wine and offering circumcisions to the ladies love them, he says, to Robin Hood and his merry men. So when they hear what it is, they're not so interested, but they are interested in the sacramental wine. And so Rabbi Tuckman has a great scene, and probably the best scene in Men in Tights, actually. In his Star Wars movie, they don't have the Force, they have the Schwartz, and Mel Brooks plays the Yoda character called Yogurt. And so there's some of the Jewish references are very explicit, some less so. I do have 30 seconds from Blazing Saddles to show you.
There's a lot of Yiddish.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm going to show you. I don't know that this scene passes muster today. No. Let me get there. So I need to share. And
I think some of the things he did, joking about women, wouldn't pass muster now.
Mm-hmm.
In Young Frankenstein, when he says to blonde Terry Garr, what beautiful knockers. And they show big knockers on the door.
Oh yeah, he's talking about the door, and she says, "Thank you." Right. I think you can do that. You can still talk about women. It's the race thing that I don't think you can do. But you tell me whether you can do this scene. I don't think so. But
Schwarzes. No, seid nicht mit sugar.
I'm not sharing yet, right? Okay. All right. Why not? So when the black homesteaders encounter the Native Americans, this is what happens.
Schwarzes. No, seid nicht Meshuggah. Laws im Gain! Kappa walk, it's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be gesehen. Take off. Hast du gesehen in deiner Leben? They darker than us.
So there we go, right? So he's the Native American chief. By the way, our author makes a point of noticing that his outfit is red, white, and blue. You see it? The colors of America in there. I have no idea what those things that are stuck on top of my YouTube there are, but anyhow. So.
Was the Yiddish translated in the movie?
No, I don't think so. Yeah. So, it was Native American dialect, right? There are some ideas, that, of course, there's no historicity to this, but that that the Native American tribes are part of the lost tribes of ancient Israel, right? So playing on that idea, he has this idea that what if the Native Americans speak Yiddish, right? They're definitely part of the lost tribes, right? So that's a part of it. But he's also watched enough movies to know that there are these scenes, right, with the settlers encounter the Indians and the Indians speak in a dialect, usually made up, which is also part of it, right? That they didn't go out and find real Native Americans to play the parts. They didn't go out and find real Native Americans to tell them what the lines would be, right? And so that's how, right? So in a way, it's a parody of the Western all by itself, right? As let's take the most unlikely person to play the part of a Native American, put him in the role of a Native American. Let's let him speak Yiddish, which is not a Native American language. It's just like all the other Westerns, right? And that's a good parody point. And it's also, I would argue, a point about racism, right? And, but one that might be lost on generation now. So maybe. So, but, and if you have to explain the joke too much, you've lost the joke, right? So, so that's a part of it. So, I think, huge influence beyond just his own work, but his own work stands up and particularly this idea that, one of the things that he considered to be very important about what he did is holding Nazis up to ridicule, right? And saying that, and it's his belief that you get more by ridiculing, right, than you do by, right, that's the one thing a bully can't stand. Okay? I'm not sure if our current moment proves that or not. Not yet, but, on the other hand, I'm, holding up a light to the things that are going on around us right now. We did kind of chase ICE out of Chicago a couple of months ago, and they seem to be chasing ICE out of Minnesota this week. And, not without some horrific and dramatic things happening, when people were killed here too. Right. They didn't happen to be white people, so they weren't as publicized across the country, right, by the news. But Silverio Gonzalez was killed here, right? So, so those losses are happening everywhere, but holding a light up to them is something that does, maybe shame people, maybe convince people that they're going down the wrong path, maybe erode the support, right, for these things, which were, prior to this election, the idea of getting rid of immigrants was very highly supported and now has less than 50%. So these things can and do make a difference. So I think in that sense, I think that Mel Brooks and what he did with the producers to start with, and then later on with some other films that he's made over the years, and interviews and everything else, does make a difference in what happens in the world. So, I go out to a lot of these protests, and people have signs that I'd say are in the spirit of Mel Brooks. Some of them are in bad taste. A lot of them use, F-bombs and things like that, about ICE, and everybody. Some of them are really, really clever, right? There's a guy, I've met him a couple of times now, who goes out with a big sign that says, "Who would Jesus deport?" Which is right. It's satire, and it's very effective, I think. So those kinds of things can make a difference. So let's see, what time have we got? A little more. Great. I'd have. Do you want to see the Springtime for Hitler clip?
Sure.
Do you all remember it from the original?
Yes.
Okay. I think I have it here. I'm sorry? Yeah, sort of. You may remember it better than it was, but let me show you what I've got here, if I can. So, do I have it? Oh, I may not have that one. Sorry. But I do have a little bit. Let me show you a little of the 2,000-year-old man.
Well, everything has changed.
So this was from. I don't think this was a regular TV series, the Dick Shawn Comedy Hour, a variety show. Dick Shawn, by the way, plays an important role in The Producers. I don't know if you remember Dick Shawn. Yeah, he plays actually the character known as LSD, who he's the one they cast as Hitler, a hippie, right, in 1967. Long hair, love beads, the whole thing. So it's one of the things that's different between the movie version of The Producers and the stage version, right? Rather than having a hippie Hitler, they have a gay Hitler, right, in the musical. So, so let's see. I think I got it here.
Change for the better. Oh, you are a wonderful audience, and the show keeps rolling along. There's a couple of guys that are going to come on now that I just can't help and can't wait to get out there in front and see. You've seen them many times. Most of us here tonight are here to do comedy highlights of the last 10 years. Well, but the last 2,000 years belongs to Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks, ladies and gentlemen. This gentleman here is one of the phenomena of the world. He looks no older than Mr. Shawn, and yet he is 2,000 years old. Is that true, sir?
Yes. You want to see my driver's license?
No. We have it authenticated. The Mayo Clinic has checked you out and said that you are 2,000. Sir, what has kept you alive for 2,000 years?
When I'll go in an airplane, if I'll go in an airplane, I'll never sit in the first two seats or the last two seats from an airplane.
You mean not sitting in the first two or the last two seats?
In the last two
has kept you alive? I don't understand that. Why has that kept you alive?
Because if the plane, unfortunately, should take a flop out from the sky, you're going to go down with it and break your foot. Right?
Yes, but if the plane
as you say, flops out of the sky, everybody in all the seats will break their feet. I mean, at least.
Yeah, let me amend that. Any seat is no good.
In other words, you're afraid to fly in an airplane.
On the nosy.
Yeah, I see, but why?
Because if the good Lord meant men to fly, he would have given them tickets, right?
Sir, I've always been interested in the origin of words. For instance, a simple word like cheese. Where did that come from?
Cheese is a lovely story, how we get the word cheese in our vernacular. In the year 28 there was an old farmer, and a gentleman came to his land and said, I'm so thirsty, may I have a little dipper milk? And he said, certainly, go over to the barrel. He not knowing that the barrel of milk had soured, see? So this poor beggar man came to the barrel and opened up from the top and looked in and looked down and went, cheese!
That's the word how it came.
That's how the word cheese came into being.
It's very onomatopoetic.
Yes, and that's the truth.
Yes. Now we don't use that anymore.
No. Now we go in, we say to the grocer, I'll have cheese. You don't go, cheese! You scare the grocer.
You notice what they're doing now? Very interesting. There's a custom that has come down through the ages. Where did it start? People applauding when they like something.
This is not.
Did people always do that in the old days?
It's very sophisticated. This little.
What did you do in a caveman?
When we were excited, we did something primitive and natural. I mean, when we were exposed to our wonderment, we really reacted. I mean, it was a.
But not like this.
No, not like that.
Well, how did you react?
Did you do something? You do something, and I'll show you the old-fashioned applause. You sing a little song, I'll show you how when we liked something, we really went for it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. You sing a little song, a high note.
I'll give you a high note.
Did you see that?
Yes.
Did you see
what did you do?
Natural reaction.
Oh! People actually hit themselves in the face.
Boy. Wow.
That hurts, though.
Yeah, you bet it hurts now.
But people applaud.
Right, and listen, it was a dangerous thing. We could not continue to react to wonderments like that, because when we had a big star, you know, like Sammy Davis Sr. would come and play the cave.
Way back there, yes.
You know, not Junior, the old one.
Yes.
We would hurt ourselves when he was terrific. So Murray, the wise one.
Yes.
Murray, was he smart?
What did he do?
Murray was smart. Murray said, folks, pull your faces out of the applause. Pull your faces out.
How
And we
did he
said,
do
what
that?
do you
Could
mean?
you
He
give us
went
an example?
terrific and terrific. And he face out of the applause, see?
That's fascinating.
That's how Murray did
Well,
it.
thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
You don't want them to
Wonderful
applaud
entertainment.
by doing that.
No, don't hurt your faces, folks. Just a simple little clapping will suffice. Thank you.
So how much of that was improv? Do we know?
I don't know, but what I do, there aren't a whole lot of clips like this. There's a handful of clips from old television programs of them performing. None of them are the same, right? So, you know, none of what he just said there, I think, is on any of the albums of 2,000-Year-Old Man. So I don't know. I don't know if they went out there and didn't know what was, you know, Carl Reiner doesn't know what's going to happen. I don't know. Carl Reiner is a very generous scene partner. And that's one of the things I think that Mel Brooks loved about him, is that, you know, Carl Reiner thought Mel Brooks was the funniest human being on earth and just got out of the way and let him be funny, you know? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It certainly feels that way. I mean, it always seems to feel fresh. There are some things that don't change. The character doesn't change, right? I mean, he's an old Jewish man. That's it, you know? So, but it gives you a sense of the 99-year-old man when he was quite young. And so he was quite young playing this 2,000-year-old character, right? I leave a little time for questions or thoughts. I didn't leave much, but. So. Mm-hmm.
His timing for the producers was propitious, because it was the first time that Jews were ready to laugh about the Holocaust, to laugh at Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
And that it was very cleansing.
Yeah, that may be true. I mean, I don't know it's how do you know when it's the right time, right? I've heard comedians these days, they tell a joke about Abraham Lincoln and then they say, too soon, right? And I don't know. So he took a gamble that we were ready. And some people were and some people weren't. And that's still the case. I mean, anybody here seen Marty Supreme yet? Right. So, it's maybe not the topic for tonight, but it's very much raging in Jewish circles online about whether or not this is a good portrayal of Jews, whether we should be happy or sad that this movie Marty Supreme is about a Jewish character. Right? I did. I loved it.
A lot of them saw it, did not like it.
Yeah.
All women.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get the filmmaker is not to everybody's taste, frankly. And I get that, his movies are very visceral. You're very, you don't get a chance to breathe for a minute in his movies. So, yeah. So let me get Alan online here first and then, yeah, Alan?
And about his use of a Yiddish accent. Do you have any idea whether he was influenced by Myron Cohn?
He definitely had some, he saw all those guys, so he certainly saw Myron Cohen. And Myron Cohen was an interesting one because he would do part of his act was to not have a Yiddish accent, right? And then he would lapse into one every now and then, for punchlines and things like that. I forget who used to do that routine. I think it was the Next Generation Jewish comic, Robert Klein, would talk about seeing a comedian, like Myron Cohen, and Robert Klein didn't speak Yiddish. So he would hear the whole setup for the joke and then not the punchline because he didn't understand the punchline, right? But I'm sure Mel Brooks saw Myron Cohen and comedians are all magpies, right? So I'm sure he picked up some of that stuff. But I think most of it probably comes from just being around in the Catskills, right? And in those different spots and where he heard those voices all around him all the time. So I think that's a part of it as well. Let's get a question here.
I remember my parents seeing The Producers. I was not that old at the time, but it made an impression on me because there are some people who thought who didn't get the joke. They took it seriously. You're praising him.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was it. If you read the reviews of The Producers when it came out, not so great. Yeah, some pretty terrible reviews, and a lot of it had to do with that bad taste, how tasteless it was, how yeah.
They didn't see it as a joke.
Right. And that it's funny because, of course, that's the story of that's the plot of the movie too, right? Is they're trying to make a musical that people won't see as a joke. And it's when someone, presumably somebody Jewish in the audience said, it's funny, that the whole audience changes and it becomes, everyone's, oh, it's funny. Well, that's different, right? So were we ready in 1967? I don't know. I'm right. He did something that made us ready ultimately to laugh at that. Although he still says movie never made $1. So not even today, not like Blazing Saddles, which made a fortune. Yeah, Brenda online.
I'm going off on a different direction. How was he associated with Get Smart? I wasn't aware that he
Yeah. So he and Buck Henry created it. They didn't write all of the scripts, but they created the characters and wrote the pilot. And then after that, I think, there were different writers involved. So like a lot of TV shows, it had a writer's room and a lot of different folks.
But that wasn't particularly Jewish. That was just funny.
No, I would say if you go, you may not have seen it in a while. If you go back and watch, there's not a lot of overt Jewish characters, let's say, but there's a lot that's sort of lurking.
Okay.
in it. There's more than you realize, I think, or maybe caught at the time. So yeah, so some subtext, and some would say that the character itself is kind of a Jewish character. I mean,
Yeah.
the Schlemiel.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I believe Don Adams was Jewish. I think that's right. So, but yeah, it's definitely let's make a James Bond TV show or a show like The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which I think was on and popular at that time. I Spy was on TV at that time. Let's make that kind of show, except let's have the lead character be a Schlemiel. Right. So, in some of it holds up pretty well, that show.
Yeah.
So what else?
Anna's father was Hungarian Jewish, his mother was Irish American.
Okay. She could have been an Irish American Jew, but that's another story. Anyhow, yeah.
Got the name of the Kafka book that you want people to read?
Yeah.
Can you look that up?
It's going to be, I can tell you right now.
Nobody's going to remember.
Yeah. So let's send it out.
And right now.
The Poet of Shame and Guilt, it's called, by Saul Friedlander.
And you should put in Franz Kafka, Yale University Press. It'll come up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I do recommend that you read the books as we do this. But even if you don't, you'll end up hearing an hour about Franz Kafka. And, it's not so bad. I won't have any film clips on Franz Kafka, I'm afraid. There's, unfortunately, not possible. But there is a connection between Franz Kafka and Mel Brooks. Does anyone remember what it is?
I know that Mel Brooks was talked a lot about Dostoevsky and what a genius he was.
Actually, he loves Dostoevsky. But it's in the movie The Producers, when they're looking for the worst play that's ever been written, and they're going through a pile of scripts, and Zero Mostel picks up a script and says, Gregor Samsa awoke one morning to find he had been transformed into a giant cockroach. Too good. And he throws it away. So that's a connection between the two, probably a little bit more. Well, thank you very much for coming. It's a pleasure to see you all, and thanks for being here online. And so about a month from now, we'll look at Franz Kafka. I think I might have one more clip if anyone wants to see it. Now that I think about it. What, did I get one more? Oh, yeah. So he was on the Mad About You TV show. So do you remember Mad About You?
Yeah.
With another Jewish comedian, Paul Reiser? Without making a big deal out of it, it was a show about intermarriage. I think Mel Brooks appeared in 3 episodes in 3 different seasons and won an Emmy each time. And no, his uncle, his father was played by somebody else. I'm not going to remember, but a big star, actually, a big movie star, plays his father. But
was he ever in anything from Jerry Seinfeld?
Not that I can recall. I don't think he ever appeared on Seinfeld. So
Louis Zorch
played his
father.
So maybe it's Helen Hunt's father, who was played by somebody famous. But okay, it's not a terrific quality from TV, but let's see if it's happening. Not Zoom share. Yeah. So he plays Uncle Phil, and Oh, my volume's all the way up. Oh.
Too much. Now, as far as the firm embracing is concerned, we come.
Oh.
All right. Okay. Take a seat. Thank you. Make yourself at home. Okay. I have a wonderful hard candy with a very soft fruit center. That's okay. No, thank you, Uncle Phil. Okay, it's your funeral. So. Yes. So what was it you said was very important? Family. This is not a job for strangers. We're not strangers. This is a job for only the people in the immediate family. Come closer. Come closer. I have to tell you something very important. Come closer. Go on, come on. Just too close. What I want you boys to do is to do for me a big favor. Your name? I want you to move the couch. What? Yes. Move the couch? Move the couch from here to here. You want us to move the couch? I can do it myself. Only I can't. Can I ask you why? Not to pry, but why you suddenly need the couch? All right. I can't see the TV anymore. Happy? Happy now? Happy you made a proud man confess that Tom Brokaw is a blur? Why don't we move the TV closer to the couch? Don't touch the TV. You move that TV an inch in either direction, I lose blue. I like blue. All right, look. We'll move the couch. Paulie, come on. Let's move the couch. Okay. Brooklyn and move a couch. Hey, tomorrow we'll go to Nebraska. We'll change a light bulb. I heard that. Patty bitter and salty. You're right. That was uncalled for, and I'm sorry. Forgive me? Fire embrace. Fire embrace. Are you ready? I'll say 3, and you'll move the couch toward me. All right? All right. And ready, and 3. 3. I gave you an ad. Maybe if you start with 1 and then work up. Oh, I know what you start with. Here we go. And 1 and 3. All the numbers. I know. That was humor. That was humor, okay? Now I'm giving you the real McCoy. Here we go. Ready? Are you boys ready? We're ready. Okay, here we go. And 1 and 2 and 3.
Trouble with YouTube is you never know what it's going to show next, right? So, but anyway, that I love that character that he plays, and so he, as I said, he appears in 1 episode in each season. I think for 3 years running, gets an Emmy for best guest appearance on a comedy show all 3 years. And one of the most delightful things watching that clip for me is watching Paul Reiser not to laugh. While it's going on. So it's a nice way to end up for us, is an affectionate look at Mel Brooks. So thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Sure.
320.